On Friday, August 28, 1998, stock car racing lost another driver as ARCA rookie Chad Coleman lost his life in a first-lap accident on the 1998 ARCA Georgia Power 200 at Atlanta Motor Speedway. A death that is mostly forgotten by most race fans, yet will never be forgotten by the ARCA family. And today we are here to tell the story. This is the story of Chad Coleman's fatal crash. So who was Chad Coleman? Thaddeus Ware Chad Coleman III was born on November 20th, 1967 in Greenville, South Carolina. A second-generation racer, and at the young age of 3, Coleman was already racing mini bikes and BMX racing in general. In his teens, Coleman would move over to the late model circuit in the local South Carolina area. Coleman's father, Thad Jr., was a racer himself. The other Coleman started as a motorcycle racer and rode in the Daytona 100 as a factory driver for Harley-Davidson. He also had 4 ARCA starts, including races in 1990 through 1992 at Atlanta and Daytona, but the elder Coleman retired at the end of 1992. Chad himself had taken a break from racing in the 90s to focus on getting his college degree from Newberry College. After graduating in around late 1997, Coleman got the urge to come back. So he called his father, Thad, and together they bought 2 Ford Thunderbirds from Tim Brewer and Jeffrey Bodine. One was for super speedways, and the other was for intermediate racetracks. Coleman and his father got the car prepped in time for Daytona testing and was cleared for driving in the actual race a month and a half later. Despite the staggering 50-plus car entry list for Daytona, Coleman managed to qualify as number 72 Thunderbird, 26th on the grid.
I don't think we'll quite end up there, but we've been struggling all week, so we're hopefully get that Chevrolet running a little bit better.
And you said it's not one big thing, it's what?
About 1,000 little ones, I think. But I tell you what, the Advanced Auto Parts crew really worked hard. We've changed a lot on the body the last couple hours, and so I think we made big improvements. I think we can keep going.
Okay, we'll be watching. Good luck.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
That's Frank Kimmel, who really picked it up here in qualifying.
Greenville, South Carolina's Chad Coleman will not get into the field unless he improves significantly on lap number 2.
Yeah, first lap was 52.620, 171.038. You saw that graphic just a moment ago. Would be the 48th fastest car as he comes by and completes his qualifying run. He needs to pick it up about 7, and he actually slowed down on his second lap, so 44th would be his lap record.
Bob, when we look at the speed charts here, we see Bill Baird on the pole at 186.197 miles an hour. That's an unbelievable time, but there's one guy that might be able to beat him still sitting in line. He'll go next, and that's Andy Hillenburg,
the defending champion of the race here at Daytona. Reminder that Shop Talk is coming up next.
Coleman, in his ARCA debut, ran solidly in the top 25 and steadily moved up through the field. Using fuel strategy, the number 72 of Coleman actually would take the lead on lap 53 and held onto it for an impressive 17 laps before having to pit for fuel with 11 laps to go.
Back at Daytona International Speedway here in Daytona Beach, Florida, laps continuing to click down. 54 are complete of 80, which comprise this event the richest in ARCA history. $208,384 up for grabs, over $21,000 to the winner.
This is the leader of the race's 72 car. Chad Coleman has not pitted. He obviously stopped earlier on some of the caution flags for fuel. He's out on the racetrack and has not pitted on this green flag situation, is still the leader. We see Bob Strait, who spun earlier, came to the pits, is in second spot. Donnie Moran is in third, and Mike Wallace and Ron Barfield of the cars that pitted are running fourth and fifth.
So once we cycle the pit stops, it should show that Wallace and Barfield, among the cars that have already made stops and are set to go for the completion of the race, would be at the top. What about the guys who are leading up front? Coleman, Strait, and Donnie Moran. Can they go the rest of the way? Why don't we check in with Kyle Petty?
Well, I'm going to give you the answer. Kyle Petty doesn't have a clue whether they can go the rest of the way or not. But like Jerry and you guys said, some of these guys were thinking they could go stretch it to 60 laps. These guys pitted on lap 22. They were involved in some of these early accidents. They saw some things happening. They pitted, changed tires, gassed. They feel like they can at least go within 1 or 2 laps. And they're talking about stretching it all the way. So when we start talking pit stops and cycles and things like that, without a caution, these guys are going to go for it.
Well, that could make it interesting.
Well, the 72 car is running 180 miles per hour, and Mike Wallace is only running 181 miles per hour. So obviously, he's not going to catch him. The fastest cars on the racetrack right now is the 80 Giacchetti and the 27 of Irwin. They're running over 185 miles per hour.
All right, our AutoZone race recap. Our leader is the car number 72. And then, of course, the efforts of Chad Coleman out of Greenville, South Carolina, has led 5 of 57 laps. There have been 5 lead changes, 2 cautions for a total of 9 laps. That's why the average speed is down to 144.836 miles per hour. Our lap leaders, Kenny Irwin dominating the early part of the race. Mike Cicchetti, Chad Coleman, our current leader. Bobby Gerhart led 4. And last year's winner, Andy Hillenberg, led a lap. Off the track, Josh Baltus, last year's Rookie of the Year, running for the championship this year, involved in a couple incidents. They are trying to get that car repaired and get back out for those valuable ARCA points. And out of the race, well, the list is Ed Curtis, Blaze Alexander, Craig Butts, Glenn Morgan, Russell Landrum, and the next page shows Kenny Martin and Joel White.
72 car, Chad Coleman, the leader of the race. Car right in the middle behind Kirk Shelmerdine. And there's Glenn Brewer right behind him. Brewer's a couple of laps down.
Chad got his college degree from Newberry College, and when he said, I'm going to go racing, he thought, I ought to buy a Winston Cup car. So he went and talked to Jeff Bodine. That's where he picked up this race car. It used to be a number 7.
It'll be 20 laps to go next time by, but the 6 and the 59 of 80 are complete, and Chad Coleman is our leader. Back in a moment. ESPYs tomorrow night, and it's getting they're getting clustered together toward the front. There's the car number 72 that was being shown as the leader. That is Chad Coleman out of Greenville, South Carolina, running right behind the Kirk Shelmerdine car.
And in turn 2, we have the Kenny Irwin car.
15 laps to go. A half a lap separating the leader from the second place car of Kenny Irwin. The leader is the car number 72, Chad Coleman out of Greenville, South Carolina.
Can he catch him in that amount of time, Benny? I mean, they've got it shaved down to 18.5 seconds now, but there's only 14 laps to go.
We'll just have to catch him.
Basically, Benny, we heard the concern over fuel, and you got to believe that this young man's smart enough, or someone's told him exactly what he has to do to conserve fuel.
Well, he's doing the right thing. He's standing behind Kirk Shelmerdine. He's drafting, saving all the fuel he can. Kyle Petty.
Well, a minute ago, the 72 was going to try to stretch it all the way. These guys change pit strategy more than I change socks. I get at least 3 days out of a pair of socks. I stick with it that long. These guys get about 15 minutes out of pit strategy, and then they change. Now they're going to have to gas and go, or at least they're going to gas and go. They're not sure, so they want to be on the safe side.
All right, 14 laps to go. We'll come back for the shootout here at Daytona International Speedway in the closing laps of the 35th annual First Plus Financial 200. Back in a moment.
Welcome back. The 72 car has decided to pit. They decided there was no need to change it. The boys getting some experience down here. They're going to do 1 can of gas. They were going to end up about 5 or 6 laps short, so they're going to come in early. They're going up for the whole can. They didn't think they needed the whole can, but they went for the whole can. He's back out.
Well, the young man from Greenville, South Carolina, got the lead at Daytona. A memory he will forever keep. In his early years as a stock car driver, he heads back onto the track. But Kenny Irwin, another young...
After getting back on track, Coleman recovered to finish 17th, the last car on the lead lap. Following the success at Daytona, Coleman's next race was 3 races later at Charlotte. Coleman would start the race 24th, ran inside the top 25 the entire race, and managed to sneak into the top 20 late in the race, collecting a solid 19th place finish on the lead lap in the 40-car field. Coleman would then take a break and return 7 races later at the second Pocono race using the same car from Charlotte. Coleman qualified as number 72 Ford Thunderbird, 23rd on the grid, and through a massive attrition rate in the race, was able to grab his first top 10 finish, finishing 10th in his 3rd start, just 2 laps off the pace. Using the same car from both Charlotte and Pocono, hopes were high coming into Atlanta Motor Speedway, as it was the exact same layout as Charlotte, a track where Coleman showed a lot of speed. This weekend at Atlanta, Coleman showed the most speed he had shown all season so far in his 3 other starts, qualifying an impressive 12th on the grid for Friday's race. From conflicting reports of ARCA crew members who were on the spotter stand for the Atlanta race, oil was being laid down on the pace laps by the number 17 car of Mike Cicchetti, who was later revealed to have dropped an oil line at the green flag. However, officials apparently didn't notice it, and the race started anyway. All 40 cars made it the first lap. However, on lap 2, tragedy struck.
Bill Baird around Finley. That's the black number 3 of Kurt Shelmerdine running back and forth. Earnhardt's old crew chief, now an ARCA stock car driver. Pretty good one at that.
Oh, no doubt about it. You know, when those cars go by, doesn't it make your hair on your arm stand up?
Smoker right there, trying to get the number off that. Oh, and we got a problem. 2, 3 cars spinning down the back straightaway. We're going to go yellow right away. See if we can figure out who it was involved in that incident. Steele, Baird, and Finley all coming across the line. Can't tell with the lighting. Oh, there's the 72 car.
Chad Coleman.
Yeah, out of Greenville, South Carolina. Coleman heavily damaged.
Yeah, you saw it, Ralph. There looked like a car that was blowing a little smoke. Must have been oil on the racetrack. It looks like a few guys got in it.
Jim Lamoureux, the
48 car. He's involved. There's a red car on the inside. I can't quite tell who it is.
The 17 was the one that started smoking. That was Mike Cicchetti. Yeah, let's take a look at the replays here now. Cicchetti's car was the one I spotted smoking first. And we'll see if we can pick him up and where everybody else. I think Cicchetti's in front of this. Yeah, see, they're all dodging.
They're all dodging. Yeah, and you can. He had what is it? The 30 car. That's Rick Shepard. He had to get in oil because you see how all of a sudden the car just spun around on him. Nobody hit him. No nothing. So you can tell the 17 car must have been dropping some oil. Rick Shepard's the first one to get in. That's Chad Coleman there. He had already hit the wall on the right side. That's why you see sparks flying from underneath, and he's just spinning around. The roof flap comes up like it's supposed to try to slow the car down, and pieces are flying. That looks like the 42 car.
And the 21 of Bob Strait just sneaking through there.
Yeah, Tim Bainey was, I don't know if he got involved in it. He did spin, but we don't know if he got caught up in the wreck or not.
Chad Coleman's car slid on an oil patch and hit the outside wall at a 45-degree angle at a speed of over 150 miles per hour and came to rest on the middle of the backstretch. Coleman, not wearing a Hans device, suffered severe head injuries in the crash, but was actually conscious when his car stopped, and Chad even radioed to his crew chief, Bill Terry, that he had hit fluid on the track and crashed into the wall. The roll bars were mangled, and the extent of the car's damage was such that it took the track safety officials nearly 30 minutes to get Coleman out of his battered car. However, as Coleman was airlifted to Georgia Baptist Regional Medical Center nearby Atlanta, Georgia, Coleman lost consciousness, and a short time later, sadly, Coleman was pronounced dead after medical personnel were unable to revive him. Coleman was only 30 years old, leaving behind a fiancée, no children. A conflicting report from another ARCA driver was that it was discovered through an in-car camera one of Coleman's gloves unbuckled his seatbelts and likely contributed worse to his injuries. Reports were that Coleman had died of a skull fracture similar to what killed drivers Kenny Irwin, Adam Petty, Tony Roper, and most notably Dale Earnhardt. Coleman had hopes of graduating to the NASCAR Winston Cup Series and even made a promotional video to attract potential sponsors for 1999. Chad Coleman's death was another incident that shook the racing world, another young rookie passing away before he could even reach his prime. Chad Coleman's death and legacy will never be forgotten by the ARCA community and is a reminder of how much the safety has improved in the sport. But our story doesn't end there. Following the loss of his son, Thad Coleman sought to pay tribute to his son Chad by racing his son's other Ford Thunderbird at the Talladega race in the fall. Although he had retired in 1992, the elder Coleman starts at Daytona granted him clearance to race at Talladega. In an interview with ARCA's Don Radebaugh, he said, "He's got ARCA's superspeedway time, and ARCA requires that. You can't just come in here and race without some previous time on track." Coleman would go on to say, "I kind of retired in 1992. But after my son's death, Coleman still had a ready-to-race car, so I decided to race them. I feel like this is what he would have wanted me to do," said the elder Coleman. "I wasn't racing through myself. I think if it's just born in you, I'm a bird hunter, and some of the best hunting dogs are old dogs. They might not be as hard or run as fast as the younger ones, but they can still find the birds. I might not do what these young guys can do, but I know I can still fin a race and be competitive, and that's what I'm planning to do. I'm not playing any games," they asked me. "Why am I racing? Well, for the same reason you guys are. Some people play golf, I race." Coleman, who said he became a born-again Christian about 5 years ago, is racing on an impossibly low budget. "We're right here down on $500 total expenses. the elder Coleman said. On a shoestring budget, Coleman still managed to qualify the number 72 Ford Thunderbird, 27th on the grid at a speed of 177.877 miles per hour. Waking up on race day, wearing a pumpkin-colored driver's uniform owned by his late son Chad, the 60-year-old Coleman stepped out of his motorhome in the Talladega Superspeedway infield to explain why he was competing in today's ARCA race, not only as a memory for his son, but himself as well. I feel like I'm kind of racing for him. You know, we were close. We had the car prepped and ready to come to Talladega anyway. Coleman would start the race 27th on the grid, losing the draft early, but unfortunately would fall out of the race just 40 laps in due to electrical issues, finishing his last ARCA race in 34th. After 1998, the Superspeedway Thunderbird was sold off to another team, and Thad Coleman retired for good. Sadly, the elder Coleman would pass away just 5 years later, on March 30th, 2003, at the age of 64. Thad's son Chad is currently resting at St. Paul's Episcopal Church Cemetery in Summersville, South Carolina. The remains of his stock car from his fatal crash still sit undercover in Washington County, Georgia. Chad Coleman and the Coleman Racing family will never be forgotten by ARCA, its fans, and its crew. We will never forget you, Chad Coleman. Rest in peace.